You know, it's funny. You think about something like a screen door or a window screen. So simple, right?
Yeah, pretty mundane, really. Just mesh.
Just mesh, standing between you and, well, whatever's buzzing around outside. But what if that basic thing, that screen, is actually part of this huge multi-billion-dollar global market?
And not just huge, but growing really quite fast.
Exactly. And driven by things much bigger than just, keeping flies out of your kitchen.
That's right. So today we're taking a deep dive based on this source you shared with us. It's a market outlook report, looking specifically at the global insect protection doors and windows market, projecting all the way out to 2033.
hmm And our mission, like always, is to guide you through what this report is saying. We want to unpack the numbers, sure, the size, the growth.
But also really get to the bottom of why.
Yeah.
Why is this market growing so much? What are the key drivers globally?
And where is this happening? Which parts of the world are seeing the biggest changes?
Because, as the report sort of lays out, this isn't just about wanting a bug-free house. It connects to some really big global issues,
Mm.
public health, definitely, climate adaptation, even how our cities are changing.
Right. So we're going to pull out those key insights for you from this report.
Okay, so let's start with the big picture, the overall global market value.
Okay. The report pegs it at, let's see, $1,843.3 million back in 2021. So just under $2 billion to start.
And the projection from there is pretty revealing. It was expected to hit about $2.48 billion by 2025, so right about now.
Right. And then here's the really striking part. It's forecast to surge, almost double that 2021 figure, reaching 4,489.3 million by 2033.
Wow, yeah, for insect screens, that kind of jump is, well, it's significant.
It really is.
And that translates into a compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, of 7.7% over this whole forecast period.
7.7%. That's a very solid growth rate. Definitely something that makes you sit up and notice in, market terms.
Absolutely.
So, okay, that's it's big, it's growing fast. But let's get into the why. What does the report say are the main reasons, the core drivers for this?
Well, it's not random growth. The source points to some specific powerful forces. Number one is probably rising concerns about vector-borne diseases.
Okay, so things like malaria, dengue, Zika, West Nile virus, diseases carried by insects.
Exactly. As these illnesses spread, maybe to new areas or become more common, keeping insects out of indoor spaces stops being just about comfort. It becomes, well, a health necessity.
They're kind of basic public health measure right at the household level.
Precisely. And it's not only disease. The report also mentions things like wanting better indoor air quality and just general home comfort.
Sure, people want to open their windows, get fresh air.
But without letting in all the pests or worse, the dangerous ones, screens are, the simplest way to get that balance.
Makes sense.
And what's really interesting is how these sort of bigger, almost invisible forces are pushing this along, like growing urbanization.
How does that connect?
Well, more people living closer together sometimes changes to the local environment. It can mean more interaction between humans and insects, which just increases the need for barriers like screens.
Okay. And the report also mentions climate change, right? That must be a huge factor.
Oh, definitely. Warmer temperatures mean insects, including the ones carrying diseases, can survive in new places. Their active seasons might get longer, too.
So areas that maybe didn't worry about certain insect-borne illnesses before, now they do, driving demand.
Exactly. And then there's just, generally increased health awareness overall. People are more informed, more proactive about protecting themselves and their families inside their own homes.
Right. So you take all these things together, the disease risk, air quality, comfort, urbanization, climate change, health awareness.
And the result, according to the report, is that these insect protection systems are becoming less of an optional extra.
And more of a standard feature, maybe even required in some new buildings around the world.
That seems to be the trend identified in the source, yeah.
Hmm.
Integrating them into modern construction.
Okay, so let's break it down by region then. The report gives quite a bit of detail there. Where's the growth happening most?
Let's start with North America. It's currently the biggest slice of the pie, the largest market share globally.
Okay. Dominant in 2021 and expected to stay the largest.
Yeah, and a huge part of that is the United States. It accounts for, well, the lion's share of the revenue in the region.
And the report gives reasons for the U.S. strength.
It mentions high consumer spending, which makes sense, and also strong trends in home renovation, people upgrading their homes.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
So strong trends in home renovation, people upgrading their homes.
Investing in comfort, health, adding screens or upgrading existing ones.
Okay. And Canada and Mexico are growing too. Mexico actually stands out.
How so?
It's projected to have a really high CAGR 9.1% according to the source.
Wow, okay, that's higher than the overall global average. Why Mexico specifically?
The report links it to a big increase in residential building, lots of new homes going up, plus more investment in public health initiatives.
Ah, so that connects right back to those drivers we talked about, construction and health concerns.
Exactly. Now, shifting over to Europe, it's the second largest market, also showing pretty solid growth, a TAG of 7.3%, very close to that global average.
Okay. Any specific countries highlighted?
Yeah, several key ones. Germany is a major player. Interestingly, the report connects its growth partly to energy-efficient building practices.
Energy efficiency. How does that link to screens?
Well, if you're building very airtight homes for energy reasons, you still need controlled ventilation. Integrated screen systems can be crucial for letting air in without compromising the building envelope or letting pests in.
Okay, that makes sense. What about other big European markets?
The UK, France, Italy, all substantial markets, steady growth expected. And it's interesting to see countries like Spain mentioned.
More climate there.
Right. And the report specifically links the growth in Spain to rising awareness, again, reinforcing that climate and health concerns are really hitting home and driving demand.
Even smaller places mentioned.
Yeah, even Luxembourg shows consistent progress. It suggests this trend is pretty widespread across Europe, not just in the biggest economies.
Okay, interesting. Where next? Asia Pacific.
Yes, and this region really stands out for its pace of growth. The report says it's one of the fastest growing globally, a projected CGR of 9.2%.
9.2%. So faster than both North America and Europe. Who's leading there?
China, by a significant margin. The report points to just massive urban construction projects.
Building whole cities, practically.
Pretty much, and also a focus on eco-friendly infrastructure. So screens are likely being built into new developments on a huge scale from the get-go.
And India. That's often a high-growth story.
It is here too. In fact, India has the highest projected CGR in the entire report. 10.5%.
10.5%. Wow.
Yeah, it's just really rapid adoption and awareness kicking in a market with enormous potential.
Okay. What about other parts of Asia Pacific?
Japan shows stable growth, South Korea too, and then you have Southeast Asia.
Tropical climates there, lots of insects.
Exactly. The report explicitly notes that the tropical climate is a major driver for demand across Southeast Asian markets. Makes perfect sense. Australia also showing steady growth.
Right. So very dynamic picture in Asia Pacific.
Yeah.
What about Latin America?
Markets there are gaining ground steadily, according to the report. Brazil is a regional leader.
Yeah.
And countries like Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Chile, they're all showing consistent upward trends as well, reflecting, more focus on home improvements and likely those public health aspects too.
And finally, the Middle East and Africa.
It's currently smaller in overall market size compared to the others, but the report still shows steady growth. Countries like Egypt and Turkey, for instance, show notable increases forecasted.
So even in regions with perhaps different economic scales, the underlying trend is still visible.
It seems so. Those core drivers, health, comfort, climate adaptation, appear to be influencing markets pretty much everywhere, just maybe at different speeds or scale.
Okay. So let's try and bring this all together. We've looked at the numbers, the drivers, the regions. What does this deep dive into something as, well, seemingly basic as window screens really tell us?
I think it makes it really clear that this isn't some niche market just about, keeping moths away from your light bulbs. It's a serious, significant global industry.
Yeah.
And it's responding directly to some really fundamental human needs: safety, health, well-being, especially as our environment and health challenges evolve.
So things like vector-borne diseases, climate change impacts, urbanization, wanting better indoor living conditions, they're all converging.
Exactly. They're translating into real, tangible demand for these protective solutions, and it's happening on a global scale.
And if we bring that back to you, the listener, what's the takeaway?
Well, it shows you how these huge, almost abstract global trends, climate, health risks, actually filter down and impact specific industries, specific products.
Right. It gives you a way to see how construction might change or how public health spending could affect what people buy for their homes.
And how adapting to climate change isn't just about big infrastructure or energy policy. It's also about things as simple as screens on our windows, affecting everyday life differently all over the world.
It's a really fascinating case study, isn't it? How these macro forces shape micro-level markets and decisions.
Absolutely.
So this deep dive really paints a picture of a a surprisingly significant and rapidly growing global industry for insect protection, driven by these fundamental needs, health, comfort, and adapting to our changing world.
Yeah, and it kind of leaves you with a final thought, doesn't it? You consider these systems, screens that many people maybe just take for granted,
Hmm.
and you realize they're becoming genuinely critical in many parts of the world, not just for comfort, but as a real, accessible first line of defense in public health.
That's a powerful point.
Right.
So thinking ahead, based on this report's projections and the trends driving them, how might the role, maybe even the design, of something as simple as a window screen keep evolving, especially as these vector-borne diseases and climate impacts become potentially more widespread?
Yeah, how critical will they become? Definitely something to think about.
Okay, let's jump right in. Today we're doing a deep dive into something that seems pretty straightforward at first glance: the insect protection doors and windows market.
Right.
We've got these market dynamics reports, and our goal here is really to unpack what's actually driving this market. It's more complicated than you'd think.
It really is. It's kind of fascinating how something like a window screen sits at this crossroads of, major global trends: public health, tech, urbanization.
Exactly. That's what surprised me.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Public health, tech, urbanization.
Exactly. That's what surprised me reading through the sources.
Yeah.
I initially thought, okay, screens, keep bugs out. Pretty simple.
Uh-huh.
But the material makes it clear right away that this is tied into huge public health campaigns, like fighting vector-borne diseases.
Absolutely. The reports really emphasize that. You see rising awareness, outbreaks of things like malaria, dengue, Zika,
Yeah.
especially in, tropical, subtropical areas, and that directly fuels demand for physical barriers. Screens become a key prevention tool.
And it's not just individuals deciding this, is it? The sources mention governments, health organizations.
Yes. They're actually writing mesh requirements into building codes, into public housing projects.
So like large-scale infrastructure stuff.
Exactly. The reports gave examples, I think, in India, Southeast Asia, where new urban developments are making screens pretty much standard because of that health imperative.
Which links into that other huge trend the reports highlight: urbanization.
Right. Globally, cities are expanding so fast. Think Asia Pacific, Latin America, Africa, all that new construction.
Means a massive need for windows and doors, and increasingly the screens come standard, not just as an afterthought.
It shifts from optional extra to a basic building component in many new builds.
Okay, but then there's this other side to it, right? The reports also talk about a move towards like premium stuff, high-tech solutions.
Definitely. Motorized screens, retractable ones, systems that are integrated really sleekly into the design.
So less about basic function and more about aesthetics, and maybe smart home integration.
That's a big part of it. It shows this kind of split in the market. You've got the essential disease prevention driving demand in some regions, and then luxury, convenience, high-end features driving it in more affluent markets. The sources mention things like magnetic closures, automated systems, very different focus.
But that brings challenges. The sources were pretty clear on the hurdles.
Yeah.
Cost being a massive one.
Oh, absolutely. Those fancy custom systems, they're expensive.
Which straight away limits who can get them, right?
Yeah.
Especially in places where maybe the basic health need is actually the greatest.
Precisely. That's a key tension. And then there's maintenance, durability.
Ah, yeah. The reports mention harsh conditions.
Yeah.
Like sun, sand, humidity.
Salt air near coasts. All that can really wear down screens fast, so you need to replace them, which adds to the long-term cost.
Then people might just opt for other things, yeah, like sprays or zappers.
Alternatives, exactly. The reports suggest those can seem cheaper or easier upfront, even if screens are maybe a better long-term physical barrier. It's competition.
So despite those issues, the market's still pushing forward, innovating.
Yeah, definitely. A big trend is integrating the mesh right into the window and door frames themselves, especially with materials like aluminum or UPVC.
UPVC, unplasticized polyvinyl chloride.
That's the one. Popular in energy-efficient buildings, makes the screens look cleaner, more built-in.
And presumably last longer if they're protected by the frame.
Potentially, yes. And you see demand growing for retractable systems, too, roll-up screens, especially in high-end homes, hotels.
Right. The reports had examples, like balcony screens in Italy, patio door systems in the U.S., where they want the function, but minimal visual impact.
Exactly. Blend practicality and aesthetics. And the commercial side is big too. Hospitality, healthcare, especially in warmer places. Think Thailand, Brazil.
Places where hygiene and guest comfort are paramount,
Mm-hmm.
or regulations demand it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if we pull this all together, what's the big picture from these reports? This market is sort of being pulled in two directions.
I think that's a good way to put it. You've got this fundamental driver of public health, basic necessity, rapid development.
And on the other side, this pull towards premium, integrated, almost smart home tech.
And those two forces aren't always, working together smoothly. There's tension there.
So for you listening, what does this mean? Well, it could affect choices you make for your own home, the costs involved.
Or even what you encounter when traveling, especially to areas where insect-borne diseases are a concern. These market forces shape the screens on your hotel window, the standards in public buildings.
Which leaves us with this final thought, really stemming directly from the source material.
Yeah, it's this interesting, maybe slightly uncomfortable question. How does a market that has its roots in vital public health, often for vulnerable populations square, that with this strong push towards becoming a high-tech, high-value feature, mainly for affluent markets?
Especially given those cost barriers the reports kept mentioning.
Exactly. It's quite a duality, isn't it? For something we might just think of as a simple screen.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.